welcome to another exciting revision video for CA Inter Corporate and other laws on your favorite channel, Theory Masters Learning. In this video, we are going to discuss interpretation of statute in English only. Up till now, we have discussed the entire Companies Act, especially in English language for my dear students. In case you have missed those lectures, I'm leaving a link here. Just click on the I button and you'll be able to revise the entire company law with me. Students, let me know if you have already watched those videos, whether you are now confident, whether your concepts are clear. I would love to know about them in the comment section. So do leave your comments and I will be very happy to read them. If you're watching my video for the first time, I am CA Preeti Aggarwal and I make videos specially for you. Subscribe to your channel, Theory Masters Learning, and also visit my website, theorymasterslearning.com, for this beautiful colorful chart book from which we are going to revise the entire law syllabus. Students, from interpretation of statutes, you can expect somewhere around 3 to maybe 4 small questions, anywhere between 8 to 10 marks from this particular chapter. Sometimes the total weightage of general clauses and interpretation goes around to 12 to 14 marks, considering you have other optional questions also. 15, 17 marks if you consider the MCQ. So yes, a good amount of weightage of question is asked from interpretation of statutes and the General Clauses Act. In this video, we are only going to discuss the interpretation of statute. In the next video, I will be covering the General Clauses Act. Students, this is our CA Inter Corporate and Other Laws chart book. We had revised the entire Companies Act, so I'm sure you know about it. But if you're watching this video for the first time, then let me introduce you to my colorful, attractive, comprehensive chart book, which covers all the concepts important for exam. Everything is in the form of properly designed charts, which if you refer, you will be able to revise the entire syllabus in just 33 pages. You can revise the entire syllabus through these lectures with the help of chart book. And if you want to buy the chart book, I'm leaving a link in the description box. Do visit my website, theorymasterslearning.com, to make this chart book yours today. Now, let us discuss interpretation of statutes. Oh, before that, many students were asking me, ma'am, whether this chart book is available in the soft copy, because nowadays they want everything immediate. They are not ready to wait for the hard copy. So yes, my dear students, we have both the options available. You can go for the hard copy or soft copy. Hard copy will generally arrive at your place depending on the destination, but we use express delivery. So the chart books are delivered, all the books are delivered in super quick manner. But if you want a PDF, then that will be shared within a few minutes of placing the order. So before going through the concepts, first let us understand what was the need for interpretation. Now, over here, we are studying interpretation of statute. Statute means law. See, law is nothing but a text. Okay, they are words, they are text written in the English language. And English is a very funny language. One word may have so many interpretations. One word may have so many meanings depending upon the context in which it is used, depending upon the mindset of the person, how he is interpreting, depending on the facts of the case. So whenever a text is provided to you, it is subject to so many different ways of interpretation. Whenever a law is introduced, lawmaker has certain idea in his mind. Now, when you sit to read that text, sometimes it may be confusing. Sometimes the intention of the lawmaker is not clearly brought out in that text. So we need someone who will guide us, someone who will help us to understand the intention of the lawmaker, and that is discussed in interpretation of statutes. These definitions, these concepts help us to interpret law in the correct manner. Now, law says that if the text, when you read, is clear enough, there is no scope for ambiguity, confusion, then you need not refer interpretation of statutes. See, this is not an act, but these are guidelines which will help you to understand the language of law. Now, as a chartered accountant, you cannot tell your client that, oh, I'm an accountant. Accounts is my main subject. Ask me something about accounts. I don't know anything about the law of my own country. You cannot give that excuse. So law says that you should, or even I see as a firm believer, that you should have certain basic understanding of law. As a chartered accountant, you should know how to interpret law. And if you're stuck somewhere, you know where to go. You should know what is going to help you to understand and clear all your doubts so that you can give proper advice to your clients. So interpretation of statute says that if the law is very clear, it is unambiguous, one word, one meaning, then you need not use any concept of interpretation. But when there is confusion, when there are two alternative meanings, then you can take the help of these rules which are discussed under interpretation of statute. So here basically we are going to learn what are the rules of interpretation. See, if we leave that interpretation part to the readers, there will be a lot of confusion because everyone will give you different advice depending on the facts of the case, circumstances. They will say what how they have understood. We don't want that. We want that everyone should have a standard understanding of law. Whenever you interpret a particular concept, every person reading that concept should understand it in the same meaning. That is why we have created rules of interpretation. So they give a lot of clarity, they help us to understand the intention of the lawmaker, they help us to interpret the language of law as intended by the lawmaker. After going through these concepts, now you will realize that all the concepts, they say the same thing. Many a times words and concepts are repeated. Basic rule is that you should first follow and try to understand the language of law as it is without using your brain. If it is clear, you don't need any interpretation. It is the meaning is clear enough. But yes, whenever you are stuck, when there are two alternative meanings, then you need the help of interpretation. If there are two meanings, two possibilities, the court will adopt one which is most reasonable, which actually brings out the intention of the lawmaker. So what is interpretation? It is a process by which, a text means anything written, it's in a written form giving an idea, is explained, understood, or translated. So any text which is read, understood, explained, translated is known as interpretation. Interpretation means to understand. These are few important terms which you should know before we jump into the rules. I'm going to cover the entire chapter in just 2 pages. Okay, so the chart book is in the A3 form. You will love the charts. My advice to you is that, if you have a study table, you should paste the charts around you. And if you have a smaller space, you can just tear. There is a perforation in the chart book. You can tear the charts. You can just place it on your study table. Tear just one chart. Keep that concept in front of your eyes, and in the exam, trust me students, you will remember all the concepts easily. So what is statute? It is the written will. Okay, the first term that we are going to discuss is the meaning of the word statute. See, it is interpretation of statute. So you need to understand what is the meaning of statute. It is the written will of the legislature, solemnly expressed according to the forms necessary to constitute it as the law of the state. So what is the meaning of statute? Statute is nothing but law. The term statute denotes an act enacted by the legislative authority, that is the lawmaking authority, which is nothing but the parliament in our country. So the president, he is the supreme authority. He gives assent to the the draft which has come, and then after that it becomes an act. What is the document? What is the meaning of the term document? Now this is an important definition. Now you will find that the document is defined in General Clauses Act as well as the interpretation of statutes. In the exam, they will give you the act that you need to under which you need to define that particular term. So if they want you to define the document as per the interpretation of statutes, they will mention define document as per interpretation of statutes, or they will say define it as per the General Clauses Act. Now what is the meaning of a document? Whenever you go somewhere, they will say please write it. Instead of that, they can say please document it. It means that you have to maintain the necessary records, any supporting or your writing, your understanding. Let's say you prepare an audit report. It is nothing but a document about all the work and your findings. To support that, you may keep other supporting papers which will support your theory, which will support your report, everything which provides as an evidence that you have done the work, that is known as a document. So document is a paper, or it is any other material. I just changed the ink. It is a paper or any other material thing giving information, proof, or evidence. These are the keywords, so I'll highlight them with red. They give you information, proof, or evidence of anything. Now, whenever you see a war memorial, you will see that there is a memorial. There are names of people, the soldiers who had fought the war. It is an evidence. It is a proof that the event had occurred. These many people had lost their lives in that event, in that war. Whenever you create temples, it is a proof that the era existed. It is a proof that the king ruled there. Okay, so whenever you see Taj Mahal, you know it is a proof, it is an it is an evidence that during that period this person ruled, and there is a history behind it. So document is nothing but any text written on paper. It is not just text, it can also include drawings, symbols, paintings. Like whenever you go to Ajanta or Ellora caves, whenever you go to any other caves, you see drawings and paintings, maybe because that time language was not invented. So they used to depict their entire day, their hunting experiences through drawings. You see Varli painting in Maharashtra. Varli painting depicts the village life of people. So that is nothing but a document. You write it on any surface. It can be paper, parchment, cloth, walls. In caves, you can write it on stones. It is engraved. Anything which acts as an evidence, as a proof that the event had occurred. As per section 3, yes, this is important, because once they had asked you to define the concept of document as defined under the Indian Evidence Act. Students got scared. But students, the definition which you find in interpretation of statute is the one given in the Indian Evidence Act. So section 3 of the Indian Evidence Act defines document as any matter, okay, any surface, any information. Matter here means information. Any information which is expressed or described upon any substance. Substance here means you can describe upon any material, paper, parchment, cloth, stone, by means of letters, figures, marks, or more than one means. You can use a combination of signs and symbols and words intended to be used or which may be used for the purpose of recording that matter. So this is the definition which you need to remember. For exam, you have to write it as it is in the exam. It is any matter, any information, anything that you want to communicate, which is expressed or described on any substance. You can use letters, signs, symbols intended to be used or which is used for the purpose of recording that matter, that substance on which you record that matter, that is mentioned in the last part of the definition. So that was document. Now let us go through the meaning of instrument. Yes, we have discussed this in the Negotiable Instruments Act. Do you remember? Instrument. Yes. Can you tell me the definition? I know I cannot hear you, but I can feel you. This is just a kind of revision. Instrument means any document carrying certain rights and duties, obligations. Yes. So what are the key words over here? It is a formal, legal document. Okay, so these are the key words because every word has meaning. It is formal because instrument is not just written in your own format or manner. It is a formal document. It is something which can be produced as an evidence in the court of law. It has a set format. So it is a formal, it is legal because it can be, yes, used as an evidence in the court of law. It is a document. It means all the essentials of a document shall apply. So it is any matter, giving any information, proof, by means of letters. All those features will apply to instrument. So it is formal, it is legal, it is a document, and it is also in writing. So this is another keyword. So any oral promise made, that will not constitute an instrument. It should be in writing. Like in the negotiable instrument writing, it has to be in writing because only a written document can be endorsed. So instrument is something which is in writing. Oral can make a contract, but it is not an instrument. It creates or confirms a right, records a fact in a technical form. So these are the keywords. Technical form because it is formal. Yes, because it is formal, it will have a set format. It will have its set features. So that is why it is technical. Deed, charter, records, these are all instruments. Now, what is a deed? It is very similar to an instrument. So in India, although instrument, deed, they are all defined separately, they actually mean the same. It is an instrument in writing. So when the instrument is writing or any other legible representation or words on parchment or paper, purporting means it is intending to effect some legal disposition, to have some legal effect, then that is known as a deed. So in India, there is a very thin line of difference between instrument and deed. You can say that instrument when in writing is a deed. So instrument in writing or other legible representation of words, it means it can be in writing, or maybe you are using some kind of a symbol on any parchment or paper, giving the legal effect to that document is known as a deed. Now we come to the most important part. What is the meaning of interpretation and how is it different from construction? The word interpretation actually means that reading the text and trying to understand it as it is without applying your brain, without applying your logic, without critically analyzing it whether it is correct or incorrect. Interpretation means reading and understanding the law as it is. If it makes sense, story finish. But if it leads to absurdity, it is giving you some vague result. This may not be the intention of the lawmaker. I don't think the lawmaker wanted to say this. If you apply logic, if you apply facts and circumstances of the case, that means that it is construction. So construction is one level above interpretation. So interpretation is the process by which the real meaning of the act or a document and the intention of the legislature enacting it or any of the parties executing it is ascertained, means it is determined, it is understood. So interpretation means reading the text and trying to understand it as it was intended by the lawmaker. When the court adheres to the plain meaning, this is the key word, plain meaning of the language used by the legislature, it would be interpretation of words. Here we are not applying logic. Here we are not applying facts and circumstances of the case. Here we are not considering anything other than the plain meaning of the words used in the statute. Interpretation is finding the true sense of any form. But if it leads to absurdity, if it is not what is intended by the lawmaker, then when the meaning is not plain, the court has to decide whether that wording was meant to cover the situation before the court. It would be resorting to what is known as construction. So if suppose it is not bringing out the intention of the lawmaker, that is not how it was intended, then that is construction. It is drawing conclusions that respecting the subjects that lie beyond the direct expression of text. You are going beyond, you are applying logic, you're going beyond what is written in actual text, then that is known as construction. We are going to discuss, because all these rules are based on that only. See over here, you have rule of reasonable construction, you have rules of harmonious construction. So here we are not interpreting because that text is making the meaning absurd. It is very odd. I don't think that is what was the lawmaker trying to say. So what you do is go one step beyond, and it is construction. So we are going to study different examples of construction. Now over here, whenever I teach this concept in class, I always tell the students that it was mentioned on a board in the building that trespassers will be prosecuted. Now a person was flying in a parachute, suffered some technical defect, and he landed on the top of that building. Has he committed an offense? If you go as per the literal interpretation of that text, yes, trespassers will be prosecuted. He is a trespasser. But if you apply logic, if you apply the facts and circumstances, he suffered some technical issues. That is why he had to land on that building. After applying logic, we will say, no, he has not committed an offense. So if you go as per the words, yes, interpretation says he has committed an offense. But if you apply logic and you go one step beyond, that construction says, no, he has not done it purposefully, he has not done it intentionally, it is not an offense. Okay. Now, what is mandatory versus directory provision can be asked as a 2-mark question. Maybe difference between mandatory and directory provision. Mandatory means compulsory. The words must, that always shows that this condition has to be complied with. It is compulsory. But may, or you shall do this. It's shall is a better word for should, but it says that it is directory. It depends actually on the context in which it is used. So mandatory provision is something which must be strictly observed. You have to follow this. Like your dad says, you must come home before 12 o'clock. So must means you have to come. But if he says like, see, this is your life, you need to do it, and see if you can come before 12 o'clock, he is leaving it to your discretion. Mummy will say, yes, nowadays these kids don't listen to us. You do whatever you want. You may come, you may not come. In short, mummy is implying that you have to come. It is mandatory. So, sometimes we leave it at the discretion of the parties, but the words used are such that it shows that although it is discretionary, the interpretation says, no, you have to come. Like, I remember one thing, students, it is very confusing, when you use the word should and shall. It is covered later also. I think, yes, it is covered here as well as in general clauses. Like there, we are going to discuss this in detail. Should and shall. I'll just share something personal with you. I remember in my articleship days, I was asked to prepare a report. So it was my first report which I was preparing, and I wrote everywhere the company should do this, the director should do this. My senior called me and say, "You're ordering them to do this. You have written the word should." I said, "Yeah, but then they should do this. No, these are the changes required and these are the suggestions." They said, "You can't tell them. You're just an article." And you cannot write the word should. It is like, commanding them. You have to do this, you have to do that. Use the word shall. So that is a better word. It's a politer word for saying that yes, you should do this, but it's a polite word. So mandatory means that you have to do this. Must word is generally used. Indirectly, we will use the word may. Okay. But again, everything depends on the context in which it is used. Mandatory means the provision must be strictly observed. Directory means if it is sufficient, if it is substantially complied with. In case of mandatory, you should do this. If you don't, you are subject to penalties. It omission to follow it renders the proceeding to which it relates illegal and void. But yes, in case of directory, observance is not necessary to the validity of the proceeding. So you may not be subject to penalties. However, see, I have written a note over there. We should look into the substance and not merely the form. You should not go by the words as it is. You should also use the context. Like over here, you want the thing to be done. Instead of writing should, you're just using a politer word shall. But it is the substance that we are seeing that no, although we are using the shall, we are just being polite. You have to do that. Okay. Now let us go through the primary rules of interpretation. Primary rules of interpretation means that these are the basic rules which help us to understand the language of law. It brings us the best interpretation of law. So these are primary rules. After this, you will also have secondary rules of interpretation. Generally, a question is asked on these individual rules. They will not ask, very rarely they will ask you to write all the primary rules. Secondary, they can say, right, what are the secondary rules of interpretation? There are 2 points which you can write in the exam. You can easily write it. Now, the first rule is the rule of literal construction. The word literal says that you have to read the text and interpret as it is without applying any logic. This is the cardinal or the basic rule. Why can't we apply logic? See, the lawmaker who has made it is a professional person. Okay, so he is someone who is learned, who has passed many examinations, he has experience. The lawmaker are people who have the knowledge and who have the expertise to prepare that act. Yes, but they are humans after all. And law is written in English, which is subject to so many interpretations. But basically, you first have to read the text as it is. If it is absurd, then you apply the other rules. So the literal construction says that this is the cardinal rule of construction. You have to understand the text in the literal sense. If the meaning is clear, adhere to that meaning, interpretation is not required. But if the meaning is not clear, then construction is required. Step 2, construction. If the construction is mechanical and literal, it is based on the rule of grammar. You read the word an, at, comma, where it is put, it is leading to an absurd meaning. Then the courts may adopt second meaning. Now, what is this? Sometimes the situation given in front of you it is possible to interpret in two meanings. The first meaning is literal reading. Okay, you are applying the fact, you are applying the circumstances, but it is based on the rule of grammar. If it is absurd, then in that case the courts will generally go for the second meaning, which is based on words, settings, circumstances of the case. If this is better, it is giving you better solution, then go for meaning 2. If I want to summarize this point, it is very simple. We have discussed this earlier also. If the meaning is clear, no need of interpretation. If the meaning is absurd, weird, like, I don't think this is what the lawmaker wanted to say, then you go for construction. In construction also, if there are two possibilities, the second one is giving you a better result, the second one is giving you word, setting, circumstances, they are giving you a better solution, then the courts will adopt that. Then we have the rule of reasonable construction. Reasonable construction means that words, statutes, they must be construed, they must be understood so that they lead to a sensible meaning. It is the same possibility 1, possibility 2. Possibility one, interpretation is absolutely vague. It is like, giving you a meaning which is, I don't think, correct for the solution. I can't use that to give advice. Then go see if there is a possibility to. This leads to certainty. It is more meaningful. Then possibility two shall be followed. Ma'am, they both are the same. Yes, as I already informed earlier, there is a lot of similarity between these rules because all the rules lead to one conclusion only. Rule of harmonious construction. Harmonious construction means that yes, we agree that the law has been written by expert, but sometimes there are two sections in the same act which may contain so slight contradictory views. So law says you have to interpret them as a whole, you have to interpret them in harmony. You cannot say no, no, it is allowed as per that section I will follow. No, you have to read the act as it is. So harmonious construction says that all the sections, subsections, rules, they have to be read together. They have to be read as one text. When there is doubt about the meaning of the words, it should be understood in the sense that they harmonize with the subject of the enactment, the object with that the legislature had in view. This is the purpose. You can say the preamble. This is the scope. So these are so many words which all mean the same. So what was the object? What was the purpose? Sections, subsections, they must be read as an integral part of the whole. They are all interdependent on each other. You cannot read them independently. They are all dependent on each other. Then rule of adjustum genesis, where specific words are used. This is step 1. After those specific words, some general words are used. This is step 2. Then the general words would derive their color from the specific words. So let's say, for example, I use words like arms, ammunitions, etc. In etc, will I use roses? No. Will I use benches? No, that is not the interpretation. Etc over there means it is related to arms and ammunitions only. When I say lion, tiger, elephant, and other animals, will and other animals include dog, sheep? No, it will include wild animals only. So when there are specific words followed by general words will derive their meaning. They will take their color from the specific words. Then we have rule of beneficial construction. That is also known as the Hayden's rule. Why am I smiling? Because this is the most frequently asked question in the exam. It is also known as the Hayden's rule or the purposive rule or the mischief rule. Now, whenever we frame an act, there are people who are waiting to find the loopholes in that act. So, because there are loopholes, we come up with amendments. Then when you come up with amendments, you try to analyze why these amendments are enforced. What is the loophole that they are trying to amend? Yes, they are trying to address the mischief created or the loophole, that people are trying to take advantage in the original act. That is why there are so many amendments. We are just trying to close the loopholes in the act. Now, whenever you study an act, you should try to find why this act was introduced. What mischief are they trying to address? When the language used in the statute is capable of more than one interpretation, then the Hayden's rule will apply. Like, say for example, if we say that the games of permutation, combination, which require the use of mind, they are considered valid. So there are some people who will say that even gambling is a game of permutation, combination. These prize competitions, they should also be considered as valid. See, yes, like card games, they also have many combinations, and there are so many kinds of permutation and combinations which we apply in these board games also, something that you play in a casino. See, that was not the interpretation of the lawmaker. They say that where mind is applied, where skill is applied, but it should also be legal, then that is considered as a valid contract. But if you say no, 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 but permutation, combinations, application of mind is required in gambling also, that is not the intention of the lawmaker. Don't be mischievous. This rule directs that the court must adopt the construction which shall suppress, that is, reduce the mischief and advance remedy. Okay. Then we have the rule of exceptional construction. Exceptional construction means sometimes certain words, they create confusion. So try removing that word, try substituting that word. Is it making sense? Then in that case, you should do that. So the common sense rule says that eliminate the words which defeat the object of the enactment. Now, if suppose you are using a word and try, if you read it as it is sounding very absurd. Try removing that word. Now, is it making sense? Okay, then you don't use that word while interpreting the sentence. Now, sometimes students ask me at this stage that, ma'am, if they know that this is creating confusion, why don't they eliminate that word? Why don't they amend the act? It is not that simple, no, students. Conjunctive and disjunctive words and or. Suppose if we read the word and as it is, it creates confusion. But instead of and, try reading it with the or. Now is it clear? Is the meaning clear? Yes, then and should be read as or. Sometimes if you read or as or, it creates confusion. Then try understanding it, replacing it with the word and. Is it making sense now? Yes. So then instead of and, you consider it as or. If or is creating confusion, try considering it as and. If literally reading these words, it leads to absurdity, it's like very weird, I don't think this was the intention of the lawmaker, then and should be read as or should be read as and. May, the word may shows that it is discretion, it is optional, you may do this. The KMP or the directors may sign it, it means it is optional. Must means it is mandatory, you must, it is compulsory, it is you have to do it, it is mandatory provision. But sometimes may, it creates absurdity, it should be read as must. Sometimes must, if read as must, creates absurdity, it can be read as may. Shall, again, it is prima facie mandatory, like I already discussed with you. It is prima facie mandatory, but it may be discretionary at times. Like I have written the word shall. It shows that it is discretionary, but I intend that it should be used as should. Like it is a polite version. It is a way of politely saying should. You should do this. All right. So it's very simple, students. May actually is discretionary. Must shows mandatory, but if it is creating confusion, then must should be read as may should be read as must. Shall, it depends, yaar. If what is your intention? If you want it to be done compulsorily, then it means should. If you are just, it's your option, then shall may be interpreted as discretionary. All right, so I think we are done with the primary rules of construction, with the primary rules of interpretation. Next, let us discuss the secondary rules of interpretation. What we discussed were the primary rules of interpretation. Now, a separate question can be asked on secondary rules of interpretation, weightage around 2 marks or maybe 4 marks. In secondary rules of interpretation, you have the effect of usage. Now, what is the meaning of usage? Usage means unwritten rules. You remember we had discussed in the Partnership Act. The Partnership Act says that you follow what is written in the deed, or sometimes there may be some trade customs, usages. These are unwritten rules, but they are followed since many years in a particular line of business. Now, Partnership Act says that you need not give interest on capital, you need not give remuneration to the partners. They are already getting a share of profit. If the deed is silent, Act says that you need not give anything. Okay, but if in my line of business we are giving partners interest on capital, share of, we are giving them remuneration since many years. This is something which we have followed since our grandfather's time. It is always the norm in our line of business. So law respects these usages. Now our law is based on act, judgment of the case, usages. These are unwritten rules, but they're followed in a line of business since many years. So yes, if suppose your rules, the primary rules, they fail, then you can rely on these secondary rules, that is usages. Now, law says that these old statutes and documents, they should be interpreted keeping in mind the time when they were enacted. Now, to give you an example, not of a usage, but of how we should interpret act on the basis of the time. Like say in the 1956 Act, Companies Act 1956, the penalties were like 500, 5,000, maximum 10,000. But now in the 2013, in the year 2013, does 500 or 5,000 have any value? People will say that let us commit that wrongful act, we need to pay only maximum 5 or 10,000. So that the value of 5,000 is no longer relevant in today's time. So that is why Whenever we read the 1956 Act, we should not say, oh, that time the penalties were so less. But you also consider the time when those penalties were imposed. That time, 5,000 had a lot of value. Yes, but in today's time, it loses value. That is why we amend the act. But whenever you read old statutes, whenever you read these old documents, you should keep in mind the time when they were written. Associated words are to be understood in the common sense manner. The common sense means that they should be interpreted according to the company they keep. Meaning is to be judged by the company it keeps. So associated words means words which are used together. They should be understood in the common sense. Common sense means all should be considered together. All those words should be read together and they should be understood in the common sense. Okay, now to give you an example, if I use the words business, trade, and profession. Meaning of the word profession, okay, if I just consider the word profession, profession is something which is non-profit. It is not for profit, like a chartered accountant. We are professionals because our aim is not to earn profit. That doesn't mean that we don't make money, but it is only that the person doesn't aim with the intention of earning money like a businessman. We're not like businessmen. Doctors, they are also professionals. Doctor is it is a medical, it is a profession, because doctors never aim with the intention of earning profit. Yes, I totally agree. You may deny with all these things. You may say that no, ma'am, doctors want to make a lot of profit, but the intention of that profession is never to earn profit. It is to help mankind. Similarly, as chartered accountants, we are also providing services to the society. Our aim is not to earn profit. If I use the word profession singly or as standalone separately, then it means a profession not for the aim of earning profit. But if I use the word profession along with business, trade, so these associated words, these related words should be understood in the common meaning. I should consider profession depending on the company that it is keeping. I should keep in mind business and trade. Now business, trade is always used, it is always done for the aim of earning profit. So when I use the word profession along with business and trade, that profession means it is a profession to earn profit. To give you another example, like entertainment. When I use the word entertainment, it is ambiguous because entertainment can be in theater, art, but it also means, like, entertainment in a water park. So what is the exact meaning of entertainment will depend upon the associated words that it is used with. So if I say like water park and entertainment, okay, water park and entertainment, it means it may include water games or it may include any kind of rides. But if I say theater, art and entertainment, it means it has to do something with art, dance, music, theater, acting. So entertainment word has different meaning. It is to be understood in the common meaning of the words that it is used with. Oops, where is it? When two or more words which are capable of similar or parallel meanings are coupled together, they are understood in their cognate sense, that is similar in origin, nature or quality. These are better words. These are like exam worthy words. What we discussed was for our understanding. Once you understand the concept, students, and you can write it in your own words in the exam in interpretation of statutes. I know it is difficult to remember the words given in the module. So what we have done is in the chart, we have simplified those provisions. We discuss the concept. You can write it in your own words and you can remember only these 2 points. Now, if this is a 4-mark question, 2 sentences you can write in your own words, and 2 sentences I have given which is manageable. It is easy to remember. So that is the main aim of chart book. We are giving you few technical sentences. Even if you write only these 2 points along with few points in explained in your own words, your answer will seem technical. It will seem marks worthy. Okay, these are few frequently asked questions which I have listed in the chart book. All right, next let us discuss the aids to interpretation or construction. So up till now we have discussed the rules which you can follow for interpretation. Now there are so many pointers which help you to understand law. These are not rules. These are things which are included in the act itself which help you to interpret law. So yes, what are internal and external aids to interpretation or construction? Now, what is the difference between these two? Internal means you will find help to interpret that statute in the act itself. You need not search outside. Sometimes it happens, no, we search at so many places, but the help is available in our nearby friends or family, you know. So here also you're trying to find the meaning outside, but help is given to you in the act itself. These are internal aids. Sometimes the act is not self-explanatory, then we can use external aids to interpretation. The first internal aid, yes, what kind of question can be asked? You can be asked to explain all the internal aids to construction, then you will have to write all the aids, you will have to explain also. But in brief, that is why the chart book will help you, because this is the exact content which you need to write if a question is asked on internal aids. External aids, they can ask you a separate question. It is unlikely that they will ask you to write internal and external aids together, to explain both together. Now, there is something known as the long title and the short title. Short title explains the enactment in a sentence. Like, it just gives you an idea what the act is about. Like if you say the Companies Act, the short title is that this act may be called as the Companies Act 2013. So from your prima facie, I can understand that this act is called Companies Act 2013, so it relates to companies. But if I really want to understand what exactly the act is about, I need some more detail. Then we can go through the long title. Now, the long title of the Companies Act says that it is an act to consolidate and to amend the law relating to companies. From this, we can understand that this Companies Act is not a standalone act. It takes all the previous Companies Act together. Whenever the word company is used in this act, it means the company which is incorporated either under this act or any other previous law. It is also trying to amend those previous laws. They are trying to amend considering the current scenario, making it more contemporary, more modern, more relevant. And this act relates to companies only. So from this one long title, we have so many interpretations. First is that this act takes all the previous acts together. Okay, it consolidates everything together. Whenever I use the word company, doesn't mean that the company means a company incorporated in the 2013 act. You may be incorporated in the 1956 act, 1913. We are not concerned. Company word applies to you also. That provisions apply to you also. It covers you also. It is to amend the law relating to companies. It is trying to change the previous laws, making it more contemporary. It relates to companies only. It means that it will not apply to proprietary business. It will not apply to partnership. It will not apply to any other form of business except company. In case of the Companies Act, the long title and preamble is the same. It doesn't have any separate preamble. Okay. So long title is the preamble itself. Short title is merely identifying the enactment. You know what this enactment is known as. It is mainly for convenience. You cannot expect people to remember lengthy sentences. So this is just one line that they need to remember. Long title, on the other hand, describes the enactment. It does not merely identify it. So it is somewhat in detail. Preamble, yes, it is important for exam, very important for exam, because I have seen a question asked on this concept very frequently. Preamble. What is the preamble? It defines the scope. Yes, please highlight the keywords. If you have the chart book, please highlight. It expresses the scope, the object, mainly the purpose of the act, more comprehensively than the long title. So it tries to provide some more detail, something that was not covered in the long title. Law says that in case you have any confusion, you want to know whether the act applies to you or not, go and refer the preamble. If a case is placed in front of you, like, you know, for example, whether this the Hindu Marriage Act applies to this couple or not. I'll give you I'll elaborate the example. The boy was Hindu, the girl was Christian. They got married under the Hindu law, Hindu Marriage Act. So whether the Hindu Marriage Act applies to them or not. Now we were confused. The boy is Hindu. Should the act apply? So then we went to the preamble. Preamble said that this is an act to solemnize the wedding between two Hindus. So it means that for the act to apply, both should be Hindus. Preamble clarified that the act does not apply to this contract, this marriage. So preamble, it defines the scope, it clears the object, the purpose of the act. It tries to establish whether the case which you are referring to can be covered by the act or not. It discloses the primary intention of the legislature. Why was it enacted? Like in case of Negotiable Instruments Act, it is mentioned clearly in the preamble that this act will apply to only promissory note, bill of exchange and check. It means that it does not apply to any other negotiable instrument. That clarification is given in the preamble itself. Then we have the heading and title of the chapter. Now, what is the meaning of chapter? You are all aware that law is divided into various acts, and each act is divided into chapters. Okay, first chapter, the chapters are divided into sections, the sections are divided into subsections. Then you have clauses, sometimes you have clause directly. So this is the breakup. Law is divided into act, and act is divided into chapter. Each chapter has a title, it has a heading. Like if you see the Companies Act, I have given you an example of Companies Act. In that we have various chapters. Chapter 1 discusses all the provisions relating to preliminary, that is basic definitions, meaning of few terms are explained over here. In the second chapter, you will have all the provisions relating to incorporation of company and the matters incidental thereto. You may be wondering, ma'am, these are the chapter names in our module. Yes, what they have done is follow the exact sequence which is given in the Bare Act. So chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 will talk about prospectus. So all the relevant provisions, all the sections will be grouped together in a chapter. So in case you want to incorporate a company, you need not search random sections here and there. Everything is mentioned in this chapter 2 itself. So chapter or title can be referred for construing the enactment or its parts. I want to know whether this particular the thing is covered by the act or not. So go to that chapter. Yes, it is covered under this chapter, this section. Marginal notes. Now these notes help us to understand a section, but only under exceptional cases. Notes, these marginal notes, they support the act, they help us to understand the meaning of the act, but they do not form a part of the act. Under exceptional circumstances, yes, they can be used for construing the particular statute. Then we have the definitional sections. Why are definitions included? Why are definitions important? Why is it important for me to define a term? Now imagine the term director. It is used at so many places in the act. If at every place we go to explain the meaning of director, the act will become very bulky. So what we do is, instead of explaining it again and again at various places, we write the definition of director at one place, which means that wherever the term director is used, it will have the same meaning. By defining a term, the lawmaker is trying to fix the meaning attached to that term. See, lawmakers change. I have made a particular law, the law was enacted, I move on to some other position, or the person dies. So the next lawmaker should not have his own interpretation. He should use the same interpretation. All right, now you and I are reading the act. You may interpret the words in a manner and I may interpret in some other manner, so that there is harmony. All are understanding the meaning of the word in the same sense. That is why laws generally, these acts generally define terms. So definitional sections, they have two purposes: to provide a key to proper interpretation of the enactment. Now lawmaker, while making law, had a certain intention. He wants that the words should be understood in that intention only, so better to define it. When you read the act, you will also come to the same conclusion. Somebody else, your junior, your senior, your peers, they will read the act, they will all understand the word in that particular sense because it is properly defined. It also shortens the language of law. Instead of explaining that word again and again wherever it is used in the act, it is always better to have the meaning at one place. So it shortens the language of law by explaining the term once instead of explaining it again and again. Illustrations, yes. Have you ever read the Bare Act? And what is a Bare Act? Contract Act, the Basic Act, yes. The Bare Act means the act that was originally enacted. What you learn in your textbooks is basically for exam. But how was the act enacted? So that is known as a Bare Act. If you see the Contract Act, students, I love reading that act because it has so many illustrations, so many examples to help us understand. Whenever there is a provision, okay, like if we are teaching in the class and I explain a concept, the immediately next demand is, ma'am, can you give me an example? Can you give us an example? Because examples help you to understand the theory better. Yes or no? So similarly, if there is any provision in the act, we give illustrations because illustrations help to understand and interpret the provisions better. So it does not leave any scope for ambiguity. They follow the text, they do not form part of the section, but yes, they are used to understand, they are used to interpret the section. Then we have proviso. It can be asked in combination with explanation. That is how they generally ask. Explain proviso and explain and the term explanation under the interpretation of statutes. This is how a question is generally asked. So what is a proviso? Proviso is nothing but an exception. Now we are trying to explain a concept. So we say that it will apply to all except, like if you see the small company, it has certain limits. It will apply to all companies except holding and subsidiary company, section 8 company, or a company formed under a separate act, yes, under a different separate statute. So the proviso tries to eliminate, or it tries to remove certain things from the provision. A proviso is added to an enactment to either qualify or create an exception to what is in the enactment. So we write the entire provision and we say now this will not apply to, or these are the exceptions, or it will apply to all except this. Then what is an explanation? Explanation should be generally read so as to harmonize with and clear up any ambiguity in the main section. Like if you see the definition of the holding and subsidiary company, after defining holding and subsidiary company, we have certain explanation points. They help us to clear the air. We know that people are going to have doubts. We know that people are going to have various combinations. Can this happen? Can that happen? What if this takes place? So we are trying to explain, like say for example, if H, that is holding company, owns 60% in S and S owns 70% in S1, indirectly S1 is also considered as the subsidiary of H. We knew that this doubt will arise after reading the definition of holding and subsidiary. So that clarification, that explanation is given along with the definition itself. But it is just an explanation. It doesn't form a part of that section. What are schedules? I have given you a few examples because many a time students keep wondering, ma'am, what is the meaning of a schedule? Schedules, yes, they are given after the act. They form part of the act. They are to be read together with the act for all the purposes of construction. They basically give you formats, clarification. Like say for example, you want to know how to draft memorandum and articles. So model memorandum and articles are given to you in schedule 1. You want to know how to calculate depreciation for the different rates. So that explanation is given to you in the second schedule. We cannot write everything in the act. Act will become very bulky. So these things, further details, I should say, further details, they are given in schedules. I want to know what is the format for preparing balance sheet and profit and loss. So refer schedule 3. Schedule 4 talks about code for independent directors. Schedule 7 will give you areas where you can spend money on CSR. So they provide you with lot of other explanations, supporting examples. They give you data to help you calculate certain things, to prepare certain statements. In case there is some inconsistency, act is saying something, these schedules are saying something less, and else then the enactment, the act will always prevail. We will keep the schedules as secondary, the act will prevail. So these are the internal aids to interpretation. We have the long title, short title, preamble. You have the heading and title of the chapter, definitions, illustrations, explanation, proviso. All these are important. They are all very small and they are easy to remember. Refer the chart book and I think you'll be sorted. Then what are the external aids to construction or interpretation? These things are not given in the act. Act is not supporting us. Act is not giving us clarity. So we try to understand, interpret the act using some external aids. Some external help is required. Like for example, you can see the historical setting in which the act was enacted. To take help from all those external or historical facts like ancient statutes, works, writings which are necessary in understanding and comprehending the subject matter, the scope, the object of the enactment. Now there are so many treaties between two countries. Everything has a history, everything has a reason behind it. Like say for example, there is a canal. Most of the ships have to pass through that canal, so we need laws to regulate it. We need to know who will receive, first we need to know who owns that particular piece of that stretch of land or water. Okay, it comes under which country, who will charge revenue. You are using our waterways, so this is a source of income for us. We are going to charge revenue for it. So now when we read the act, we should try to understand the history. That time there was no other medium of transportation. This was the basic medium of transportation. That is why these treaties were made. This was the tax imposed. This was the medium in which then they started changing it. Whenever you read any act, you should try to understand the historical setting. What was the situation at that time? Suppose, we have rules for trams. So that time there were trams, but now you have so many other modes of transportation. We don't require that act anymore. So why was that act enacted? Why was that act deleted, repealed? So all that is based on historical settings. Consolidating statutes and previous laws. It is presumed not intended to alter the law. Whenever you amend any act, it is not to change the entire law, it is only to change a few provisions. Let's say we had the Companies Act 2013, then we have the Companies Amendment Act 2015, we had the Amendment Act 2017. These amendment acts, they are not intending to alter the law, they are not intending to change the meaning of law. What they are doing is they are just trying to consolidate everything, amend to make the law more contemporary. Sometimes the provisions which are enacted, they are so strict that a businessman finds it very difficult to cope up, so then we bring certain relaxations. There were recent amendments where the provisions had decriminalized so many sections because we felt that it was too harsh. Sometimes we enact provisions which are so difficult for private companies, small companies, so then later we try to bring relaxations for them, but we are not trying to change the law, we are only trying to help the businesses. Usage, these are trade customs, traditions, these are unwritten rules. So like I always give the example of a partnership act because it is so easy to relate as a student. In a partnership act, if it says that you need not give interest on capital, you need not give remuneration, you are giving them a share of profit, why do you need anything over and above that? They are not creditors, they are not employees to get remuneration. But if your partnership deed allows, or if there is a trade custom, then law is a little flexible. They're saying, all right, since years you have been following this tradition, don't discontinue, we respect that. Where the meaning of the language is doubtful, usages guide us as to how that language should be interpreted, acted over a long period of time. So sometimes the act is ambiguous, or maybe it is not giving us clarity. Then see how the traditions, how this business is carried on since years. Try to understand laws through that. Earlier acts, later acts, and analogous act. Analogous acts, it means that, suppose, let's say for example, by mistake, okay, by mistake, in the Income Tax Act, I forgot to change Companies Act 1956 reference to Companies Act 2013. See, Income Tax Act gives reference to the Companies Act at many places. Now after 1956 we came up with the 2013 Act, but maybe at one place we forgot to change that to 2013, it was still printed as 1956. Does it mean that for that particular section we should consider the provisions of the 1956 Act says no. By mistake we have not changed it to 2013 doesn't mean that you will keep on applying the principles of 1956 Act. You need to read that section considering the latest provisions of the 2013 Act. Different statutes shall be taken and construed together as one system and explanatory of each other. In case of discrepancy, obviously the act enacted later in time shall be valid, and it shall be held to have modified the earlier act. All the provisions of the latest act will apply. Dictionary definition, yes. When everything fails, we go to the dictionary. Like, you want to know the meaning of a word, you will first ask me. If I'm not available, you will go ask your mom. If she doesn't know, you will Google it. If nothing works, then you will refer the dictionary. So law also does the same thing. They will first try to understand the meaning as given in the act. Act is ambiguous. Can we apply rules? Can we apply the internal aids? Are external aids, other external aids available? If nothing works, then see what the dictionary says. Then ultimately dictionary meaning will be considered as final. Where we find that a word is not defined in the act itself, we may refer the dictionaries to find out the general sense of that word, and then we will apply it. This is very important, students. You will apply it considering the context in which it is used in the act. If you Google the word, they will give you so many alternate meanings also. If it is an act, if it is a verb, then how it is to be interpreted. If it is a noun, all right, it can also mean this in different scenario. So every word can mean different things considering the facts and circumstances of the case. Yes, like I gave you the word entertainment. Entertainment, if it is used in an industry wherein you have games and sports, so that entertainment is different from the word entertainment which you use along with theater, plays, art, singing, dancing. That entertainment word means something else. So the word entertainment has so many different meanings. So a dictionary also provides you different meaning. but you should consider the meaning which fits best in your context. If it provides only one meaning, then you will interpret that considering the circumstances also. You are not going to just interpret the words as it is. Literal meaning sometimes does not help. We should also apply facts of the case. Lastly, use of foreign decision. It may seem as a very small part, but it is asked in the exam. Yes, sometimes a 2 mark question is asked on use of foreign decisions. In contract act, students, if Indian contract act is silent, or the words, it is not very clear, it is ambiguous, we still refer the English law for contract act. Why? Because see, the Indian law is based on English law. Okay, it is inspired from English law, and their judiciaries are very similar to ours. See, they were the ones who initiated all this in our country. But yes, if there is any ambiguity in the Indian law, we can refer either English or American decisions, because they have the same systems of judiciary as ours. So they follow the same pattern. That is why they have the same structure. We can use their decisions. These are the decisions in the cases, so you can give a reference. Like in the contract act, you must have studied Balfour versus Balfour. It's not an Indian law, but still it is relevant because we have the same judiciary, that the laws are quite similar. So law says if there is ambiguity, you can refer the judgments made by the courts under foreign law. Students, with this, yes, we come to an end of our chapter. We discussed few important terms, the primary and secondary rules of interpretation, internal and external aids to construction. And with this, we have completed the entire chapter. I hope you are loving the videos. Do leave your comments in the comment section. We are doing these revision lectures in English only, especially on the request of our students. If you have any other request, you want me to do video on any particular concept, this is your channel. You request and we deliver. So request, given your request on any of our social media handle. We are present on Instagram, Facebook, Telegram. You can send us a WhatsApp. Number is already available on my website, theorymasterslearning.com. You can connect with us on any social media platform. You can comment in the comment section of this video, request a video, and I will definitely make a video on that concept. All right, students, so I'm taking your leave. I hope you are watching all the revision videos. We also have videos on RTP, MTP discussion. So stay in touch, study well, and all the best for your exam.